social aspects of every project. That is the hidden factor, the hidden risk that determine whether a project moves forward or whether a project collapses. This is why Rich Flood is doing this. Number one, targeted at our clients, and then number two, targeted at anyone promoting any form of project that could be financed by a financial institution or development financial institutions. So the slide is not showing, but I'll proceed all the way. The next slide was supposed to show environmental and social risks. What are they? These are risks that affect the environment. And not just the environment. These are risks that also affect the communities where the project is going to situate. In other words, we call it the host communities. And in the overall, it affects the sustainability of the project. And these include the environmental impacts like pollution in all its forms, and also social impacts, like when you have community conflicts or labor issues within a community, within the organization. These are social impacts. When a community rises to say, no, we do not agree with this project, we tag this as social impact. Or they have a form of grievance against the project. This is social impact, and it has really adverse effects on the project in the overall and the sustainability of the funding itself. And this type of impact also translates to operational, not just environmental. It relates directly to operational. It impacts operational activities, and it also translates to regulatory impact. Your reputation as an organization is also at risk, and also eventually financial risk and even economic risk. So E&S, which is environmental and social risk, is a particular aspect of a project that determine whether a project is funded or the funding is sustained or not. So when we talk about the E&X risks, we're really talking about risks that can affect the entire viability of the project. Next slide is why E&S risks is a hidden deal breaker or a deal maker. So E&S risks are often not visible at the early stages of the project. That is why we conduct ESIAs, that's environmental and social impact assessment. But however, during due diligences, during the ESIA, during other ESDD, which we call environmental and social due diligences, or during the assessment by the banks who are funding the project, these risks become very clear. The lenders immediately flag these risks because they can lead to delay for project implementation. They can lead to shutdown of the project, and most often they can lead to even losses. So this is why many deals fail quietly because of unmanaged environmental and social risk. And there are different types. The types of environmental risks we have, like I mentioned earlier, could be pollution of water. Most of our Nigerian people, if you remember the Ogoni land, where there is pollution of water, pollution of farmland, pollution of land, generally, these are environmental risks. This can halt a project, this can escalate social crisis, and can lead to operational risks as well, and financial risks. So it goes on and on once we miss the environmental risk assessment and mitigation. They also include inefficient use of resources such as water and energy. It can also be climate related. It can be transboundary, not just within the locality where the project is. And those projects, like in the Ogoniland case scenario that I mentioned, it can impact on biodiversity. So if these risks are not properly managed, they can lead to regulatory penalties. That is very common. But the worst that should not happen is that it leads to operational disruptions and close down of the project. We do not want that happening, and that is why we assess this early and take the proper action that needs to be taken. Next is types of social risks. Remember, we are dealing with both environmental and social risks, and they relate to people. As I said earlier, to communities. the host communities, the surrounding. They include conflicts. It could be land disputes. Maybe the project had acquired 1,000 hectares of land or 500 hectares of land. If the social risks associated with that land take is not properly managed, it could lead to land disputes. It could lead to displacement issues. Maybe the occupiers of the land, there is their farmland, is their livelihood, source of livelihood. It could lead to that displacement. And other risks within the organization could also be labor conditions, and it could be health and safety concerns. So even when a project is technically sound, social risks can stop it from operating effectively. This is why we do these assessments. And where does the risk hide? E&S risks are often hidden in a weak documentation. There is a documentation, but it is weak, or the assessment is poor, and maybe the framework that was set up lack monitoring procedures. They can also be hidden in contractor activities, not directly by the project proponent, but the contractors who are brought into the project could be the ones that could trigger the E&X risks that are hidden. So this is where they're hidden, and we have to, in most assessments, in most due diligences, find all the loopholes where these risks could be hidden and try to make sure that we identify, we analyze, and we mitigate such risk. It could also be operational practices. It can be hidden in operational practices that are not properly controlled. This is why proper review and validation are really very critical for a project to succeed when it comes to the E&X risk assessment. So how does lenders view risk? They usually, from my experience, classify risks based on high risk projects. Those ones are usually rejected. The medium risk projects, those ones are given conditions before the project will proceed. And then the low risk project, they move faster. This is why E&S is directly linked to financial decision. It's not an afterthought. So what are the consequences when we ignore the risk? The consequences will include project delays. It can include regulatory shutdowns. I've sat in meetings where we're trying to negotiate with the regulators for the operation to proceed because of a shutdown. It can lead to community protest as well, and eventually rejection of financing. These are real outcomes that affect project success, and that is why we run this series, so that we can tackle them as part of raising awareness to project proponents or financial institutions, what to look at and how to manage the issues. Then I will talk about the risk and bankability. How does risk and bankability go together? A project without proper risk management is actually not bankable. If we have not identified the risks associated with a project and how to manage the risk, that project completely is not bankable. If the project has weak systems in place, that can result in conditional approvals. But when there is a strong system, a strong structure, like we discussed in the last episode, and also in future episodes, we've got a whole lot of arrangements in place to discuss the systems and the structures that need to be put in place for a project to succeed. So when the systems are strong, they make a project more attractive to lenders. They become more bankable. And bankability is directly tied to how risks are managed, not the lack of existence of risk. No, it is basically how the risks are identified and how they are managed. Talking about identification, how do we identify the risk? It can be identified through proper assessments, like I have talked about, and after the assessment, to proper inspections to make sure what is in the assessment matches what is on ground. And then continuous stakeholders engagement when it comes to social risks, most especially. And then monitoring, scientific monitoring of every aspect of the environment that needs to be monitored. And when we identify the risks early It is key to preventing major issues from happening later in the life cycle of the project. Now, how do we manage the risk? The risk can be managed through a structure, a system, as I said, through action plans, through monitoring frameworks, depending on what risks have been identified, and also through continuous reporting and updating regarding the risks that have been identified, what actions have been taken, or what future actions will be taken to ameliorate the risks completely. It is not a one-day activity, but an ongoing process throughout the life cycle of the project. We make common mistakes sometimes when handling risks or when tackling E&S risk. The common mistakes could include treating E&S as a paperwork. This is just a paperwork. We have a lot of clients who think so. And when you try to not make them look at it in that way, they say, no, but just tick the checkbox. We have done the right thing. No. E&S, ESA, ESG, ESDD, all of the frameworks and instruments available to a project is not just a paperwork. It is a tool to be used to mitigate risk. And a system must be set up around these tools to make sure that they are effective. And also, the common mistake we make is that we engage too late. Rich Flood, come and help us target this, come and help us develop an ENS, ESIA, that's Environmental and Social Impact Assessment. And when we get there, the project is halfway gone. That is a common mistake. Such projects are so hard to fund. We have to work hard to be able to establish some certain baseline environmental parameters of that environment before we can proceed. Another common mistake is lacking monitoring data. Yes, monitoring is taking place, but it's not properly documented because there is no structure to document or systems or people, responsible people set up to do the right things at the right time. Or there is even no monitoring at all until something happens, something bad happens, and then we start running around. Another common mistake is ignoring the community. Oh, this project is funded by so bank. This project is the national project. This project has the president of 2-3 countries interested in the project. The communities don't matter. When we ignore the communities in that direction, it leads to a lot of problems. Risks arise, risks that are not documented, and when they are not managed, it begins to become a red flag for the project and can halt funding. So these mistakes significantly increase the project risk, and we are trying to support the process at Rich Flood to make sure that clients identify the risks early, that our proponents, the project proponents, conduct due diligences early, that we join you, we work with you to develop systems and structures that need to be put in place, and then we establish monitoring frameworks to make sure that the project meets lender requirements and remains sustainable as necessary. What's the next step as I wrap up to listen to us? If you have questions, you can drop in the chat box and then we can attend to it, or we can see if we have the opportunity to also unmute people to speak. The next step is for you to look at your project and ask yourself, what risks exist in this project? And are those risks documented? Are they managed? Have you identified the risk? Do you have a risk register? Do you have frameworks or instruments that helps you manage this risk? If the answer is no, then it is important to take action early. And now is the time, irrespective of the stage of the project, to take action to avoid future challenges. We are available to support this process and to support your project readiness for funding. Thank you for your time. We are happy to now take questions and discuss how we can support your project moving forward or generally on the presentation today. Thank you. Any questions, please? Today is a Monday, so we usually will make this very short and direct so that we can get to the business of the day. So if there are no questions, I will thank you for coming and look forward to you attending in the next 2 weeks. We will send communication as usual so that you can attend and we keep this alive. We have a series of events, titles to cover. It's a series, so we would cover from simple to complex. What would happen is that on the Rich Flood website, we are going to also make available all the videos. You can always go back if you miss any of the episodes and watch them. So we'll be looking at case studies later on after we have established basics. We'll pick projects financed by any DFI or financial institution, and we'll look at what happened as the project progresses, how it succeeded or how it failed. So we'll be looking at such parameters. Thank you very much for coming and do have a very nice day. Thank you, Mr. Adamo. Thank you. I see your message. All right. Mr. Olani, you're unmuted. Are you speaking? Otherwise, we close the room
Yeah,
now.
yeah. I would like to speak.
Okay, please
Thank you.
proceed.
Thank you very much, madam. It's nice see your face this early Monday morning. And specifically, my question, I think I have a few questions. Um, so, from your experience, ma'am, what are the most common environmental or social issues that cause uh, the lenders to reject or delay industrial projects?
Yeah, so practically speaking, community conflict is one. When there is conflict in the community and the project have to stop because lenders will not fund a project that is boiling crisis, then that's an issue. Second, it could be the process of land take. We have a couple of projects. Last week, our COO at Rich Flood was telling me that a project was halted completely by a development financial institutions because of a land take issue. So this is hundreds of hectares that have been acquired by government. Both government and the proponent had acquired this land. The government had issued C of O
Mm,
on the project. Project that needs a large land take. And when they were running the due diligences on how the land was taken from the communities, from the farmland owners, from the landowners, it was flagged red
mm,
that the project cannot succeed. And now we are all stuck. The project proponent is stuck. The other financing partners are stuck. The project vision is halted. Why? Because the process of land acquisition was not properly conducted in line with some certain, most especially IFC performance standards. So there are guidelines, like we treated, I think is in episode 2 or so, or episode 1. There are guidelines on land acquisition, how to engage with the community, how to solve any crisis, how to manage livelihood of the land occupiers. We have these two misconceptions. You think that we have paid the landowners off. These are evidence of the payments. They're the landowners, we have paid them. However, we forget that we have the land occupiers who are not necessarily the landowners, but they live there or they farm there. So according to the highest standard that we have embraced, which is the IFC performance standards, those land occupiers need to be engaged. You need to look at what livelihood sources will be distorted due to this operation, this project, and document the data regarding their livelihood. What is the crop? What is the harvest they normally have? What is the household number? socioeconomic data of the land occupiers. These have to be documented. A study and assessment have to be done, and a plan have to be developed to sustain that livelihood. The project cannot snatch away the livelihood of some persons because they're vulnerable, because it's not their land, because they're not supposed to be in the metrics of things. No. So the project must take care to make sure that the land occupiers are taken care of. So that's the most recent experience we have on ground now. And we said, okay, let's go in and solve this problem. Let's do an enumeration. Let's do all of the assessment. Mind you, the government had issued a CFO. The government had said, no, continue, don't forget about those people. Just go and do the project. After all, the project is for their benefit. No? No? Yes, the project is for their benefit, but no, you can't take their livelihood. So we are now going back now. This is a land taken maybe 10 years ago. We are going back to do the proper assessment to call the people who are living on the land, whether it's a batcher, we call batchers, yeah, or is a hut, or is a farm, small farm, big farm. We're now going back to run the analysis to make sure that nobody gets hurt because of the project. So you can forcefully take the land and forcefully chase everyone out, but it's a red flag for DFIs, most especially. It's a red flag. It's a red flag. So I hope I've been able to give a source of messages. I would like to quickly take them. Mr. Olani, have we tackled that?
Yes, it's been tackled. I think it's clear.
Thank you. Aisha Diko.
I've dropped your other messages now.
Okay, I'm checking the chat box now. Okay. Amasaf, hello, Adetutu Adekoya. It's been a while. Amasaf. Okay. Thank you. I'm checking the chat box. Mr. Israel Usman, there's no fee for this. This is free, 30 minutes every 2 weeks on Monday. So it's free to attend. Thank you, Jenny. Okay, Vivo say, how can host community identify a bankable project to vicinity? Okay, I don't fully understand, but bankability is determined by the banks, not the communities. It's determined by the banks, not the community. But the community have, they occupy a critical space when about bankability, because the project is going to be situated in their environment. So there's certain triggers, standards that will be triggered so that they are duly engaged through certain engagement procedure. Yeah. I think Vivo, this is the second time you're asking the question. Do you want to drop your email so we can talk with you properly? Vivo, yeah? Can you speak up?
Okay, yeah. What I was trying to know is, most of the times these proponents will not divulge much information to host communities about who is financing the project. So my question: how will community know that this project is bankable, so that it should, in case there is anything going on, they can report to the lenders?
Yes, so confidentiality, most projects also like to protect that so communities don't go straight on and be reporting to the lenders. So in that regard, I think if there is anything going on in a certain community that is not right, I think the government of that country or the regulators, we have regulatory agencies that should be contacted to do the right thing. Yes, issues can be escalated to the lenders, but that is when they are known. So, and most lenders will publish also the projects they are funding on their websites. African Development Bank will publish all projects they are funding on their website. World Bank will do the same. So that's another way to know. Yeah?
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yes, Eleanor, thank you. Okay, maybe what we will do now going forward, we will drop, if you come in the next meeting, because we don't have registration for this event. So the next meeting in 2 weeks' time on Monday, the same time, we will drop a link where all the slides are, so you can easily download. So Rich Flood Office would have either, we use Canva, so we can share a view-only Canva link during the event like this, so that after the event, then you can download. Yeah, if we had a structured registration, we would have been able to do the sending. Thank you all. Okay, I have one. Sorry, Ola Tobosu. Thank you. Does data, as you have said, can post impact assessment. Okay, so regarding PIA, post-impact assessment, depending on the context and the country that we are looking at. But context number one is when an ESIA was not done at all and the project have progressed. Maybe the project have progressed for 5 years. Then the regulators will say, okay, conduct a post-impact assessment. That's on one hand. Then from the DFI angle, it could be that the project has now progressed. The ESIA was done, but now they want to know post-construction phase, what is the impact of the project? So a post-impact appraisal is done. It depends on the context by and large and the objective of the study. So different names: post-impact assessment, impact mitigation monitoring, environmental and social compliance audit. So we have different names for it. But in the Nigerian context, it is really when you have missed the ESIA phase, when the green data is lost, the baseline data information is lost because the trees have been cut down, roads have been constructed, farmlands have been destroyed, there's no data captured prior to these activities. Then they could say in Nigeria, okay, conduct a post-impact assessment and make it a one-season study so that we can even have an idea where we are right now, post-construction or post-operation. Where are we? Since there's no baseline available at all. Now let's go and establish whatever we can grab as the data for this environment at this time. Then we call it post-impact assessment. So it depends on the context, Mr. Olatunbosun. Thank you. It's like you were here the last episode. Yeah. All right. Thank you all, everyone. We see you again in the next 2 weeks. You take care and good luck on all your project implementation. Bye.